Hello, I am Chad Lammers, Sarah Lancaster's new grad student at Kansas State University, studying agronomy with a focus on weed science. Today, we will discuss my research field in Ottawa, Kansas. My research goal is to evaluate the interactions between soybean variety, row spacing, and herbicide plan on weed control. This will help me understand how to keep farmers' fields clean all season long. My first recommendation is to choose a variety of soybeans that are resistant to herbicides. The new herbicide trait packages are the LLGT27 soybeans and the E3 soybeans. The LLGT27 are resistant to Roundup, glyphosate, Liberty, glufosinate, Elite 27, isoxaflutol, and the E3 soybeans are resistant to Roundup, Liberty, Enlist, and Enlist 1, the active ingredient of 2,4-D. Elite 27 is the new HPPD pre that got commercial approval this spring, and it does very good in tank mixes. Spartan, the active ingredient of sulfentrazone, is an older PPO herbicide that was tank mixed with Zidua SC as the pre for our E3 soybeans. All of these herbicides are important tools and will work best when you start with a good pre and keep the residual on the field. My second recommendation is to consider narrow row spacing. As you narrow the rows, soybeans will canopy sooner, which will help the crop use the sunlight and nutrients more efficiently than the weeds. The important thing to note during the 2020 growing season is that we had some crusting on our population, and the target of 140,000 plants per acre was not achieved. The pre had a Zidua SC, which requires a ½ inch of rain to be activated. Luckily, we received that a couple days after application. The middle of the growing season was drier and could be a reason the pre's held on for so long. Here are the checks for Ottawa, Kansas. Notice the high population density of Venice mallow and common water hemp. Remember these checks as we look at the rest of the plots. For your reference, the GB in the variety name stands for the LLGT27 soybeans, and the EB stands for the E3 soybeans. This slide shows the difference between herbicide treatments for the LLGT27 soybeans grown in the 15-inch row spacing. The first picture here shows the pre-application of Zidua SC and Elite 27. Notice that some weeds are in this plot. The next two pictures were sprayed with a pre-application of Zidua SC and Elite 27, as well as a post-application of Liberty and AMS. The only difference is the middle picture did not receive the extra soil residual that the last picture had. The last picture also received Dual Magnum. Same story in the 30-inch row soybeans. The plots without a post-application had weeds coming up and could develop into a problem. Adding the post-application helped to control these weeds. The soybeans, the E3 soybeans at 15-inch rows. Weed control so far in the season seems to be improved with the application of Spartan when comparing the plots that only received a pre. The post applications in the E3 soybeans were very clean. The Enlist 1 and Liberty combination seems to work very well together. Again, we have a similar story in the 30-inch row soybeans. Weed control is very good, especially using a post-application of Enlist 1 and Liberty. Across all varieties and all row spacings, weed control greatly improves when using a pre and a post system. I have seen that the 15-inch row soybeans have canopied before the 30-inch row soybeans. Up to this point in the season, no noticeable difference in yield or weed control has been observed with the different row spacing. However, literature has suggested increase in weed control resulting in increased yield with the narrow row spacing. We will take these soybeans to yield to determine if there is an effect on row spacing. Gaps in the canopy open the door for weeds to come through. Take a look at prickly sida that is growing in the middle of the planter skip. Narrow row spacing and consistent populations across the field will help to control weeds. In order to try to determine the interactions between soybean variety, row spacing, and herbicide plan and weed control, more data will be collected throughout the rest of the growing season. Weed control evaluations will continue every other week, and weed biomass will be collected at crop senescence. The plots will be harvested for yield, and I will look at the economics of these practices. In Ottawa, Kansas, during the 2020 growing season, the Spartan herbicide used on the E3 soybeans had better control than the Elite 27 on the LLGT 27 soybeans. It is important to know the resistance that you are facing in your personal field to better be able to manage the weeds that you have for years to come. Thank you for listening to my talk. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. The email is on the slide. Thank you.